Hello, my name is Megan Myers. Today we'll be doing our CLC project on mandatory immunizations. First, I just want to talk about how a vaccine or immunization works. A person is first injected with weak or dead bacteria, and their white blood cells will then activate to produce antibodies to fight that specific disease. If the person is then reinfected with that disease, the antibodies will fight off the invading cells. So next is our overview, and immunization's specific goal is to basically just to reduce the risk of a specific disease. And I found a quote by N. Thomas that I really liked that said, "Immunization is the key component of primary healthcare and an indisputable human right." And then to the right over here, I just have a picture of the different vaccinations that are required by Arizona for children's grades kindergarten to 12.
All right, now we're going to weigh in the pros and cons of getting mandatory vaccines. So some of the pros are it's a great way to prevent yourself and prevent others, keeping everybody around us safe. It can prevent serious illnesses, and some jobs already require you to get vaccines, specifically in healthcare. Some cons would be the safety is sometimes unknown with different vaccines, but you are born with a natural immunity, so some people don't want to get a vaccine on top of having your natural immunity. We also don't want to make decisions for people because it is a free country, so they can decide for themselves if the vaccine is necessary for them or if they don't want that. Also, this is kind of rare, but sometimes you can get an adverse reaction from vaccines just because it's implementing the sickness into your body, but in a very small amount. Our group stance is we decided vaccines should not be mandatory for the general public. Certain jobs, like healthcare workers, like we said earlier, will need to get vaccines for their job. But as a whole, the general public should not have to if it's not necessary in their life. It should be their choice.
Okay, so the rationale behind why vaccines should not be mandatory. First, mandatory vaccines ignore bodily autonomy and moral integrity. By making a vaccine mandatory, it is completely ignoring bodily autonomy and a person's right to choose what goes into their body, what they do with their body, what happens with their body. It completely ignores bodily autonomy. Next, it can cause a psychological reactance, which can worsen vaccine hesitancy. So, for a lot of people, there are studies behind this that show saying you need to do this makes people not want to do it even more. So it causes a lot of hesitancy and will even worsen people not getting the vaccine. Another reason that mandatory vaccines are not right is because minority ethnic workers are less likely to have access to vaccines. So by making vaccines mandatory in like a workplace, it is unfair to people who may not have access to those vaccines. It creates a gap within the workplace and just is unfair to those who may not have access. And then lastly, another rationale for this is because vaccines with booster doses are always being updated. So being fully vaccinated is never like a complete end goal. There's not an attainable end goal in sight. It's evolving and unattainable. Think of the COVID vaccine, for example. That vaccine has multiple booster shots that keep coming out. And so to make that mandatory, you're not giving like, you have to get this one injection and that's it. It continues to go on over time, which is just unattainable for a lot of people. And it's just not really fair to make a vaccine mandatory, but that one vaccine that was mandatory is now 5 vaccines. So these are just some reasons behind why mandatory vaccines are unfair and they should not be mandatory.
Hi, I'm Kayana, and I'm going to be talking about the support for why immunizations should not be mandatory for the public. So the first key topic is about the Nursing Code of Ethics, and this just explains that as a nurse, you have to respect a person's right to make their own decisions about their health and refuse services. So therefore, if mandatory immunizations were instilled, this would just void the right for people to have autonomy over their own health. And this kind of goes into the Nurse Practice Act. And the Nurse Practice Act talks about how protecting individuals from harm and promoting health and safety is a key concept in nursing. So if immunizations were mandatory, this could definitely cause a decline. It could cause harm in patients who are immunocompromised or if someone has a specific condition or disorder or disease that interferes with the vaccination, it could definitely pose harm or threat to the person's health. And as nurses, the overall concept is to educate and provide care to people. However, we have to do that with someone's consent, and we can't force them to take an immunization, even if it is beneficial. And therefore, mandatory immunization should not be instilled for the public because it can really hurt someone's health if it does interfere. Thank you.